All right, hello, I am Mr. Rogers,
And I'm Mrs. Froman.
and these are the video notes for section 3-3 in your book. I believe it's chromosomes and inheritance, but we're basically going to be talking about meiosis today, a brand new process. Well, not brand new to 7th grade science, I guess. So,
Yeah.
And to get started here, guys, we talked about the history of science here. We talked about Gregor Mendel so far and how he had those laws of genetics. He could kind of see these patterns forming where certain traits were popping up in generations and sometimes they weren't. And he had that kind of prediction of when things were happening. Well, what Walter Sutton did, he discovered that the sex cells that are used for reproduction had half as many chromosomes as other body cells. And so he concluded that chromosomes are carried, Mendel's heredity factors on these genes, that these are how they're transmitted from one generation to the next. So this chromosome theory of inheritance is genes are carried from parents to their offspring on chromosomes. And so this kind of more now actually proving, I guess, Mendel's work would be the best way to put it.
Right.
Now we can see the DNA and those genes being passed on from generation to generation. I'll let Mrs. Froman jump in with what we're talking about
So
here.
what we're talking about is meiosis. It's the process by which the number of chromosomes in the cell is reduced by half to form those sex cells, which is the egg and the sperm that are used in reproduction.
And so normally my cells have 23 pairs of chromosomes.
Pairs, yeah.
And so we're kind of splitting the pairs, right? Meiosis is the idea. So those pairs
so
are broken
end up
up.
with half as many chromosomes. So the steps of meiosis, the first one is the beginning of meiosis, and every chromosome is copied, so it's just like mitosis. It has to copy the DNA. The centromeres hold the double-stranded chromosomes together, so it starts out pretty much the same.
That sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah. So there they are, all the chromosomes.
All the chromosomes.
Then they have what they call meiosis 1, which is the first division in meiosis.
Okay.
The chromosomes pair up in the middle, just like they do like in metaphase.
Sounds a lot like metaphase and
Yep.
mitosis, yeah.
But what happens is instead of the centromeres being broken at this point, the pairs, where you have their 23 pairs of chromosomes, those pairs pair up,
So there's
and
the pairs.
one half of each pair goes to the other side of the cell.
So it's the entire chromosome.
Yeah, the whole little X
X.
chromosome is being dragged to the other side of the cell. So we started out in that cell there, we have 4 pairs, and then they get split apart, so you end up in that telophase with 4 in each cell.
So the pairs are split. That's where those pairs are split.
Yeah, so you end up with half the number of chromosomes as the parent cell.
So then in meiosis 2, now the double-stranded chromosomes move to the center of the cell. So now we're just talking about these, just a single X's, no more pairs. And now the centromeres split, and the 2 strands of each chromosome separate, going to opposite sides of the cell. So now, if we zoom in here, we can see there's now just a single X is the single chromosomes, and they split. So now, really, that half of a chromosome is going to each side. So there's half a chromosome on this side and half a chromosome on this side. So in telophase, I can see they've kind of straightened out. And so just half of an X, we'd say, or half the chromosome is in each side.
Then the end of meiosis is when those 4 sex cells are produced. Each cell has half the chromosomes as what the parent cell started with. Each cell has 1 chromosome from each original pair. So just one side
chromosome
of that X.
So we started with 2 X's, and now we're down to just half an X.
Just half an X.
Half an X, half the chromosome. And I know we're kind of doing a lot of the birds and the bees talk, but this is how it is for every living thing. This is
Plants and animals.
Those little, down to your little microscopic bugs, things like that. You can barely see, all the way up to your biggest animals carry out this process. So it's really universal, not just for humans, but for all living things that carry out reproduction there. So, yeah, I like this idea at the end. We go from 1 cell, and at the end you can see down here we have the 4 cells. And again, each one, some may have some of the same traits, DNA, and there's the blue and there's the red. But now they're ready for reproduction. So when they combine with the other cell, then they'll have that whole X again. Is kind of the idea. And we'll show more of that here in a minute. But now if we looked at it in a Punnett square form, the Punnett square shows how one allele goes from to each sex cell, and so we get then to each possibly to each offspring, I guess. So the boxes show the possible combinations of the offspring. So if we have a recessive allele here, and we have looks like a hybrid, they're heterozygous, we can see the chances of that trait being passed on right there in that Punnett square form. And so that just kind of puts into the Punnett square form what we've been talking about, the half of the DNA is going to go to the offspring. And so we talked about this before in the beginning a little bit. The idea of chromosomes have 23 pairs of chromosomes, so 46 total. And so one chromosome in each pair comes from each parent. So here's this pair of chromosomes, and I get one from mom, one from dad. Is the idea. It's on this side. Yep. And we say they're X's. They're kind of funky looking X's.
Yeah, some of them are kind of
little short, nubby ones or different ones. But in general, they have that X shape, so that's why we kind of say the X chromosome shape. And then we put one more in here, and we're trying to show, I think, here is the idea. We almost really need like the centromere right in there. So if you pinch in the middle, that'd be the X.
That's our X-shaped chromosome.
And so this is our X-shaped chromosome. So the idea is that M for like maternal is supposed to be like what came from the mom's side, and this what came from the dad's side. And you can see like the shades are the same. So maybe the gene for hair color is right here on both. There's one allele for hair color on the P for the dad's side, and there would be the allele for hair color on the other side. And whichever most dominant is what would show up. That's kind of the idea if we drew an A or something in there. But we wanted to show this kind of homologous pair, so the same pair of the chromosomes. So this is how we're combining those recombining chromosomes. We say, again, half comes from mom, half comes from dad.
Yeah, so that's true of every cell in your body, every DNA chromosome that you have. Half of it came from your father, and half of that came from your mother.
Okay, and that's why we get the idea of it combines together.
That. Yep, so all 23 pairs, half of it's from your mom, half of it's from your dad.
All right, 7th grade. So that's kind of the little more the science behind. We kept saying, half the DNA comes from each parent, and there's more the nuts and bolts how we go from how that actually happens, how you get 50% of the DNA from each parent. So we're going to stop there. We thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you along the way.
Bye.